Welcome back. Our guest in this segment is Larry Hammant. Larry teaches a course on the history of human rights at Camsoun College. We're going to be talking about human rights and the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So welcome, Larry.
Good to be here.
And we were just talking about it. Why don't you just pick up right where you were before we started this segment?
Well, as you mentioned, I teach a course on the history of human rights, and one of the things I have regularly is a discussion group amongst my students, and we were talking about the French Revolution recently, 1789, and one of the things that was intriguing, it was a secondary issue, but it was intriguing nonetheless, was the fact that in the age before the French Revolution, the Bourbon kings and the famous Louis who were saying that the state is me, the argument was that certain people should have no rights, and amongst them was actors. And even the revolutionaries after 1789 said, well, should we allow actors to have rights, political rights and civil rights? And I said to my students, why do you think there would be this discrimination against actors? And they mostly had it right. They I think, recognized that actors, especially at that time, because the theater was very subversive. The kings hated the theater and from time to time banned the theater because there was all this subversive content, anti-monarchy and pro-right.
It was the TV of the day.
It was, yes, right, and very popular media. Yeah, people went to the theater, yes, and I think the long and the short of it was that actors were seen as subversive, disreputable. They disguised who they were. Of course, that's what you do. An actor is somebody other than who they really are. Especially for female actresses, they were seen as sexually promiscuous. And in general, the whole class of people were seen as disreputable and therefore did not deserve rights. And so, we had a little discussion about that, but it occurred to me that that argument is not has not gone away.
No, it's right here.
And in particular, at that time, this was last month, when the actress or pop star Miley Cyrus and Pamela Anderson, another actress, and you could argue about what kind of actors they are, but nonetheless, they have established reputations. They were both in British Columbia, and they were criticizing the wolf cull, right? The really interesting response from the Premier of BC, Christy Clark, was to dismiss both of them. And in particular with Miley Cyrus, you might recall, she issued this really condescending kind of tweet saying, if we want some help on our twerking policy, we'll consult you. And it struck me that in a way, what this argument was it was a 250-year-old argument for the denial of rights. One of the things that's been established in the contemporary age of rights, especially since the Second World War, is that rights are universal. The Charter says everyone has the following freedoms, and it lays out freedom of conscience and religion and a number of rights. But what the Premier was arguing was effectively that Miley Cyrus and Pamela Anderson did not deserve to have freedom of speech because they were disreputable. You know, their social practice, their acting, their public persona was something that most people scorned and believed was sort of beneath the common standard of respectability. And therefore, they did not have the full rights that other people have. So once again, although universality of rights is the common accepted standard over the course of the past 65 years or so, in this case, there's an argument made by a pretty significant politician to say that limiting rights on the basis of what occupation you have is proper.
Well, what about the idea of people who are made homeless by the actions of the people who run our society. I mean, talk about having no rights. These people don't even have the right to, to life, because if you're living on the streets, death comes a lot faster. So, and this can happen to any of us who happens to, 90% of us who happen to have a little run of bad luck can end up there. So what does that mean about rights? I mean, do we have any rights? I've looked at the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. You see the paper sometimes. Yeah, we got the right to vote, for whatever that means, and we got the right so far to free assembly, but the right to, the right not to have somebody who runs our economy just come down on you because they want your money, right? And so they force you onto the street. You've got nothing. What rights do we have?
I think there's always this balance between contingency. In other words, there's certain cases where the universal standard doesn't apply, and universality is always that great debate within rights. But yes, you've pointed to a perfectly good example of people who are deemed to have, because they haven't the standard of living of other people, they're deemed to have fewer rights, and indeed their rights are almost disregarded. But I mean, one of the other things that the Charter includes is the right for people to remain in their country, for citizens to remain in their country. Yet, here's a case where Stephen Harper is promising to pass legislation, if he's elected Prime Minister, it has been passed, to deprive people born in the country, citizens, of their right to remain in the country.
Yes.
Basically, they're going to deny citizenship and essentially deport people, one of whom is actually born in the country. And so that's another one of those cases where I think the second general condition applies, and that is you are practicing something that is seen as barbarous, as disreputable, as beneath our standard of morality and cultural norms. And therefore, you have passed beyond having universal human rights applied to you.
And I think in the end, and this is Bill C-24, anybody can look it up. Harper has passed a law, given zero coverage in the media, and really that is a very telling thing, that the media supported the passage of this bill by simply not telling people. I never heard about it until it was already law. I was shocked. It allows millions of Canadian citizens, born here or born abroad, to be stripped of citizenship and exiled if, now right now, of course, the bar is very low or high. You've got to be an accused terrorist or something like that. But how long is it going to be before speaking out against an oil pipeline will get you into that situation? Because all they have to do, and they've done it in the past, decades ago in Canada, where union leaders were deported, right? So how soon is it going to be before a few people who speak out against pipelines are going to get their citizenship taken away, and after that nobody will dare to speak out? That's where we're being taken by the lunatics who run our country, and I don't mean the politicians, because they're kind of the puppets, but the people who really run the country.
Well, and that's another point about the standards of human rights, and that is that we say that rights can't be taken away for bad behavior. You said something that people didn't like, and therefore we're going to take away your freedom of expression. Or in this case, you've done something that people didn't like, and therefore we're going to take away certain rights. Because if you basically, once that happens, once you begin the process of restraining or taking away rights on the basis of bad behavior that offends, or speech that offends, or things of that kind, then, as you say, it's a slippery slope, and indeed, the good behavior, bad behavior kind of dichotomy is one that human rights specialists say we've got to move away entirely from that, because if rights are earned by good behavior, then they can be taken away for perceived bad behavior, and that's the slippery slope. So universality is the thing that people insist on and have to continue to insist upon, because other than that, you're going to get definitions of who falls outside of the realm of those enjoying rights that are based upon whim, political prejudice, bias, and the like. And you see so many examples of this where politicians who would claim to uphold the Charter, believe in the Charter, and believe strongly in human rights, are constantly trying to whittle them away by exceptions of various kinds. And the niqab is another example as well. That's another barbarous cultural practice. That's exactly how slavery was justified 300 years ago, because Africans had no civilization, and therefore when Thomas Jefferson, the American sort of Declaration of Independence, would say, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, he had slaves. How could he justify that? Well, because they were not true humans. They were not men, because they came from a barbarous culture. It was, it's a 300-year-old argument and still being repeated with regard to the niqab.
Very dangerous and interesting situations. Larry, thank you very much.
Good to be here.
And thanks for watching Citizens Forum this week.